Saturday night. Your phone is blowing up. 3 different group chats. Someone's doing a bonfire. Someone else just dropped a "you coming?" text. Your coworker posted a rooftop thing on Instagram. 20 people, drinks, good vibes, the whole deal. And you looked at every single one of those notifications. And you put your phone face down. Not because you're sad. Not because nobody likes you. Not because something's wrong with you. But because the idea of staying in, just you, your space, maybe some food you actually like, something good playing in the background, genuinely sounds better. Like significantly better. And the weird part? You don't feel bad about it. You feel like you just dodged something exhausting. If that hits different, if you just felt called out in the best possible way, this video is going to explain something about you that most people in your life probably never understood. And honestly, something you might not have fully understood about yourself either. Let's start with the thing everyone gets wrong. When people find out you prefer being alone, there's this automatic assumption that kicks in. They think you're shy, or depressed, or that something bad happened to you, or that you secretly hate people and you're just too polite to say it. And maybe you've heard it enough times that you started wondering, wait, is something actually wrong with me? Here's what's actually going on. There are 2 completely different experiences that our culture keeps mashing together, and that confusion has caused a lot of people to misread themselves entirely. The first one is loneliness. Loneliness is a signal. It's your brain sending an alarm. Hey, you need connection, you're not getting it. Fix this. Feels restless, heavy, like something's missing and you can't sit still until you find it. You can be lonely in a packed stadium. You can be lonely sitting right next to someone you've known for years. Loneliness isn't about how many people are around you. It's about whether your need for connection is being met. The second one is solitude. And solitude is something completely different. Solitude is a choice. It's not running from something, it's moving toward something. Toward quiet. Toward your own thoughts. Toward a version of yourself that only shows up when nobody else is in the room. When you're in healthy solitude, your body doesn't feel that restless alarm. It feels the opposite. Like pressure releasing. Like you can finally breathe all the way out. Neurologically, they're not even close to the same thing. Loneliness triggers your stress response. Cortisol goes up, your nervous system gets tense, your brain goes on alert. But healthy solitude? It often activates the parasympathetic nervous system. Heart rate drops. Muscles loosen. Your brain shifts into a slower, deeper gear. One depletes you. The other recharges you. And if you've spent years thinking you were the broken one for preferring quiet, you were just misreading the signal. Feeling restored when you're alone isn't a red flag. It's data. Here's something nobody talks about honestly enough. Being around people is work. Real, cognitive, energy-consuming work. And for some nervous systems, it's a lot of work. Every single social interaction, doesn't matter if it's a deep conversation or just grabbing coffee with a coworker, your brain is running 1,000 background processes simultaneously. You're reading faces, tracking tone of voice, monitoring your own body language, filtering what you say before you say it, calculating how you're being perceived, adjusting in real time based on subtle cues most people don't even consciously register. It's like running 15 apps at once on a device that operates best with 2 or 3 open. For some people, that stimulation is addictive. They feed off the energy in a room. The noise, the unpredictability, the social current. It charges them up. But for people who prefer to be alone, that same environment hits differently. Not because they're antisocial. Not because they're awkward. But because their nervous system hits cognitive overload faster. The bandwidth fills up quicker. And once it's full, everything starts to feel like too much. The noise, the small talk, the performance of being on. And here's what most people don't realize. It's not just the big social events. It's the accumulation. A full week of meetings, casual conversations, group lunches, text threads to keep up with. By Friday, some nervous systems aren't just tired. They're genuinely depleted in a way that sleep alone doesn't fix. That quiet room on Saturday night isn't antisocial behavior. It's maintenance. Now let's get into why some brains are wired this way, because this part is genuinely fascinating. Most people know about dopamine. It's the chemical your brain releases when it's chasing something. Novelty, excitement, A new experience, social reward. Dopamine is loud. It loves unpredictability. It's why a crowded, buzzing environment can feel electric to certain people. More stimulation, more potential reward, more dopamine. Highly extroverted nervous systems tend to run heavily on this pathway. The louder and more unpredictable the environment, the more alive they feel. But there's another neurotransmitter that doesn't get nearly enough airtime: acetylcholine. Acetylcholine isn't about chasing the next thing. It's about depth. It rewards sustained focus. Long stretches of uninterrupted thought. The kind of mental state you get when you're 3 hours deep into something you actually care about and time just disappears. For people who prefer to be alone, this pathway tends to be dominant. And here's the thing. A brain that's optimized for acetylcholine doesn't experience high-stimulation environments as fun. It experiences them as expensive. Too many inputs, too many variables, too much noise drowning out the deeper signal. It's not a flaw. It's literally just a different neurochemical profile. And when someone wired this way finally closes the door and the noise cuts out, something shifts. The default mode network activates. That's the brain state associated with deep reflection, pattern recognition, creative processing, memory integration. It's where a lot of your best thinking actually happens. For people who prefer to be alone, solitude isn't emptiness. It's when their brain finally gets to do what it does best. So how does someone end up wired this way in the first place? Part of it is temperament, meaning you were kind of born with it. Researchers have observed differences in nervous system sensitivity from infancy. Some babies are highly reactive to stimulation, bright lights, loud sounds, new faces. Others adapt easily. That early sensitivity often develops into what we later recognize as introversion or high sensory processing sensitivity. For these kids, the world just registers louder, more intense, more overwhelming. Being alone isn't loneliness, it's regulation. But temperament isn't the whole story. Some people develop a preference for solitude through experience. If you grew up in an environment that was emotionally unpredictable, where connection sometimes felt safe and sometimes didn't, you might have learned early on to rely on yourself. Not because people weren't worth trusting, but because trusting them felt like a gamble you couldn't always afford to take. Solitude became familiar, and familiar equals safe to a nervous system that's been on guard. There's also a third path, the intellectually or emotionally complex kid who just never quite fit the social rhythm of their peers. Too much going on internally to connect easily on the surface. So they built a rich inner world instead. And that inner world became home. Now, here's an important distinction, and I want you to really sit with this one. There's a difference between solitude that stabilizes you and isolation that shrinks you. When you're in healthy solitude, your body softens. You feel clear. You come out of it with more capacity than you went in with. When you're in trauma-driven isolation, your body braces. Thoughts loop. You're not resting, you're hiding. And the world keeps getting smaller. If you're not sure which one you're in, ask yourself this. When you imagine real connection, not a loud party, but genuine, safe closeness with someone who actually gets you, does that thought feel warm or does it feel threatening? If it feels threatening, that's not a personality trait. That's protection. And protection, while completely understandable, sometimes needs to be looked at. Here's a perspective that genuinely reframes everything, and it might be the most validating thing you hear today. If humans are fundamentally social creatures who survived by sticking together, why would evolution keep producing people who prefer to be alone? Because every group needs more than just connection. Picture an early human settlement at nightfall. Most people are gathered around the fire, bonding, laughing, reinforcing the social fabric that keeps the group together. That connection is critical to survival. But connection alone doesn't keep a group safe. Someone has to be watching the tree line. Someone has to notice the pattern that doesn't fit. Someone has to be comfortable with silence long enough to actually hear what's coming. The highly social members built the bonds that held the group together. But the solitary-minded members built the awareness that kept the group alive. Cognitive diversity wasn't a bug in early human groups, it was the whole point. A tribe of all fire huggers might miss the slow, quiet threat building in the dark. A tribe of all watchers might never build the trust needed to function. Balance was the survival strategy. People who prefer to be alone often carry the traits of that observer role. Sustained focus, independent thinking, pattern recognition, the ability to sit with uncertainty without needing to fill it with noise. This isn't mythology. This is a legitimate adaptive framework. So if you've ever felt like you were somehow less than for not needing constant social stimulation, consider this. Your nervous system might be running an ancient program. One that was never broken. One that was always necessary. Now take all of that and drop it into 2024. We live in a world that is structurally biased toward extroversion. From the time you're a kid, the loudest voice in the classroom gets called a leader. Group projects, participation grades, presentations, the system consistently rewards those who perform their thinking out loud and in front of others. In the workplace, it gets worse. Confidence gets conflated with competence. The person who dominates the meeting gets credited with the ideas, even when the quieter person in the corner had the sharper analysis. And then social media turned the volume all the way up. Platforms are literally engineered to reward constant output. Posting, reacting, commenting, performing a version of yourself for an audience at all times. The algorithm doesn't care about depth. It rewards frequency. For people who prefer to be alone, this cultural environment doesn't just feel exhausting. It can feel like a constant, low-grade message that the way you're wired is somehow insufficient. But here's the irony. Burnout is at an all-time high. Anxiety is spiking across every demographic. Attention spans are collapsing. The hyper-connected, always-on culture is producing a mental health crisis at scale. And in the middle of all of that, people who know how to disconnect, how to sit with their own thoughts, how to recover in stillness rather than chase stimulation, those people aren't behind. They might actually be ahead. But I'd be doing you a disservice if I didn't say this clearly. Loving solitude is a strength. But there's a line, and it's easier to cross than most people think. Healthy solitude is chosen. It's peaceful. You come out of it with more energy, more clarity, more of yourself. Isolation is different. Isolation is when solitude stops being a choice and starts being a default. When your world keeps getting smaller, fewer people, fewer calls returned, more invitations declined, not because you're recharged, but because connection itself has started to feel threatening. The difference isn't how much time you spend alone. It's whether that time is expanding your life or contracting it. Solitude should make you more focused, more creative, more present when you do show up for the people who matter. If it's making you less connected, less capable of intimacy, less willing to let anyone in, that's not solitude doing its job. That's something else wearing solitude's face. You're allowed to love your quiet. Just make sure your quiet isn't slowly becoming a wall. So here's where we land. If you're someone who prefers to be alone, you are not broken. You are not antisocial. You are not behind on some social development curve that everyone else figured out. Your nervous system restores in stillness. Your brain does its best work in depth, not noise. Your energy is finite and you've learned, maybe without even realizing it, to protect it. That's not a flaw. That's self-knowledge. The goal isn't to rewire yourself into someone who thrives in loud rooms. The goal is to understand your own wiring clearly enough to use it, intentionally. Protect your solitude like it matters, because for you, it genuinely does. But leave room for the kind of connection that doesn't drain you, the slow, quiet kind, the one-on-one kind, the kind where you don't have to perform anything. Because the best version of who you are doesn't live in isolation. It lives in chosen stillness, with just enough room left open for the people worth letting in. In a world that mistakes noise for importance and visibility for value, choosing to know yourself in the quiet is one of the most countercultural, most human things you can do. If this video finally put words to something you've felt your whole life, hit subscribe. We go deep on the quiet, complex, real layers of human psychology, the stuff that actually explains why you are the way you are. And drop a comment below. What do you actually do when you're completely alone and it feels just right? Let's make this the comment section where the quiet ones finally talk. Thanks for watching.